Hey, everybody, welcome once again to the Football Fandemic, where we are previewing the Super Bowl. Looking forward to see Eagles, Chiefs. Who's it going to be? Going to talk about some news and a whole lot more right here on the Football Fandemic. Well, hey, everybody. You have myself and Josh Kolodziejski here with you today. We are Brandonless. Brandon is on his way to Illinois to help grandparents move or something.
Well, I guess there's wherever his grandparents live, there's a winter storm. So he is doing the gentlemanly perfect grandson thing and helping his grandparents during that time. So maybe like doing some shopping for them so they don't have to drive out in the snow or whatever else they need. But he'll be out there for the weekend visiting with them and helping them out. So
it's just the kind of guy Brandon is, and Packers fans in general are, could we say? Maybe Packers owners are.
We can say it's the type of guy that Brandon is. Well,
we'll just leave it at that. If you're a Packers fan out there, you can decide if it's the rest of the Packers organization or not.
No, the Packers are good. They're good. They're good people.
They're good people, says the Minnesota Vikings fan. I love your equality there. I can't think of the word where you give compliments even to your
I'm very I speak very like politically, reaching out to both sides of the aisle, the Packers fans and the Vikings fans. I am a Vikings fan, but I won't hate you if you're a fan of the Packers. Maybe the Saints, but not the Packers.
Now that surprises me. So big non-Saints fan, huh?
Yeah. So that Super Bowl that you guys lost to the New Orleans Saints?
Oh, I do. Hank Baskett will live in my memory for that onside kick. Oh.
So yeah, right before that, they were doing the Bounty Gate thing to Brett Favre, and right. I just have not liked Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints ever since that.
That was when Brett Favre was a Viking.
Yes. Yep. So we were in the NFC Championship game. We were driving down the field, and then Brett Favre. This is the conspiracy theory is that he was a covert Packers agent at this time because he leads us in a tie game down the field and then fires an interception. And the Saints go on to win in overtime. So he did exactly what Brett Favre did in that game. And I will never forgive the Saints for that. We've beaten the Saints in 2 playoff games since then, including the Minneapolis Miracle, where Mr. Sean Payton was, after they took a lead with like 10 seconds left, he was doing the skull chant and kind of mocking everybody. And then Stefon Diggs made him eat his words. And
that was when Stefon Diggs burst onto the scene, right?
Yes.
Then we're like, Stefon who?
Yeah. So like Saints, no go there. Packers, no go either. But you see the character of people like Brandon, so we respect that.
So totally an aside, but last night I work at a college ministry. I walked into out in the lounge where guys were playing Madden something, and one of them's like, "Yeah, I just traded." Derek Webb, right? He's the quarterback there in New Orleans.
Derek Carr.
Derek Webb. That's a musician. No wonder it sounded off and wrong. Derek Carr. He's like, I just traded Derek Carr and somebody for Bo Nix. I got like Sean Payton's quarterback back in New Orleans. I'm like, whatever.
Going back to that NFC Championship game, just to like put my heart out there even more. It was actually not the fault of Brett Favre. I'm going to retract that. I was watching the game at my best friend's house. It was his father's fault. So his father, who has been a Vikings fan for many years and who should know better about the heartbreak and the jinxing and all of that. Mm-hmm. After we got into field goal range and call a timeout, he comes prancing into the room, jumping up and down, saying, "The Vikings are going to the Super Bowl. The Vikings are going to the Super Bowl."
And then
very next play was the Brett Favre interception, and the Vikings never touched the football again. So it is his name is Chuck Bruno. It is his fault, and he will not be. I still hold a grudge against him for that.
Yeah. Yep. Nobody should ever celebrate early. I don't care. As Buffalo Bill fans know, 13 seconds left in a game, you don't yet celebrate because things happen.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, not the Bills. So one of my coworkers, she's like, I don't know who's in the Super Bowl, but I made buffalo dip. I'm like, well, a little off. You should have. I don't know what you would make for Kansas City. What, like barbecue or something?
Barbecue, yeah.
Something like that.
They've got Zaxby's chicken. I know they have that out there. It's a good little chicken spot that they don't have in Arizona. So every time we, go up to Illinois on a road trip, we stop at Zaxby's. But I don't know if that's Kansas City specific.
Right.
And then what Philadelphia cheesesteaks.
Cheesesteaks.
Right? So that's an easy one.
That one is like a gimme. Philly cheesesteak. Yeah. So, well, we are going to talk about the Super Bowl in just a moment. But first, as always, we have the things that are going on in the NFL, the news from around the league. And there is still some in this 2-week window before the Super Bowl. What kinds of things have come up, Josh?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest piece of news here is that Myles Garrett posted on social media that he is requesting a trade from the Cleveland Browns. He's not like doing it with any ill will towards Cleveland or the fans. He just wants to win a Super Bowl, basically, is what he said. He says that he does not want to go just from Cleveland to Canton. That's not the goal of his NFL career. He said that the main goal is to win a big game. And right now believes the Browns are not in a place, and I think most people would agree with them, the Browns are not in a place to win the Super Bowl in the near future, probably during Myles Garrett's prime. So he wants to head somewhere else. There have been a couple of teams that not are like linked to them. I don't know if there's been like a ton of contact right now made between Cleveland and other teams, but there are teams that people are speculating could be interested, including the Washington Commanders. So Josh Hupp's team could sign Myles Garrett, and that would give them that would help their defense out a lot. A defense that was up and down a little bit throughout the season and kind of got exposed a little bit against Philadelphia, but it would be cool to see him in a Washington uniform next year.
Yeah. Unfortunately, something like that happens, and I don't even get my hopes up because nobody's like, I want to go to Indiana. Feeling Indiana is like a great spot. The weather, the tax, the winning. Oh, wait. Yeah, none of those things are really good in Indiana. The weather's not good. The taxes, they have them. It's not like Miami or Dallas. The winning hasn't happened in a while. So
yeah, another team, the Detroit Lions.
Also winning team now. Yeah.
The idea of pairing him up with Aiden Hutchinson on opposite sides, even without Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn next year, I think that still catapults again the Lions to the top of the NFC conversation for a third year in a row if they can pull that off. I don't know what the capital and all of that is. They also said the Raiders are interested, or not interested, but the Raiders as a potential landing spot. It's probably going to be some surprise team that we haven't mentioned. Oh, the Buffalo Bills also, just basically to build a team that can beat Patrick Mahomes in the AFC for years to come. But Buffalo doesn't really have the cap at this time. They'd have to change their roster a lot in order to make that work.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a team that has the assets they need, but also is a Super Bowl contending team. Because that's what he's saying is, I want to win the big game. So it's surprising to me that he's linked to the Raiders.
Yeah,
what could even make anybody think that that's a team that's on the cusp of getting to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, they're not close right now. A new head coach. I mean, they do have a Super Bowl winning head coach, but the parts on the roster outside of Max Crosby and Brock Bowers are just nowhere to be seen for Las Vegas. Right. But I mean, wherever he goes, he's gonna make a massive impact on the defense. There's a chance he wins Defensive Player of the Year tonight. I'm still going with my guy Zach Bond, hopefully for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I mean, he's the best pass rusher in the NFL, and he's still in his late 20s. So he has a couple of years left to be still an elite guy at the top of his game. So it's gonna be costly, not only in terms of contract, but also in terms of the draft picks that you might have to give up. I've heard some people say that it could be 2 first rounders and some change as well, like a second round or third rounder. So you're going to have to invest heavily in that, and you're probably going to want to be a team that already has a lot of pieces in place so that you're not hurt as badly with the lack of draft capital for the next couple of years.
The last first round draft pick we gave up to the Browns was for a Trent Richardson deal that was horrible. So I don't want any part of it. I know Myles Garrett's better than Trent Richardson, to be sure. But
is that the only time the Cleveland Browns have fleeced a team? Real like
I would have to say yes. I can't in recent memory remember them fleecing anyone ever besides us.
I don't think they didn't make anything of it. I think they turned that into like Johnny Manziel or something. So it wasn't like
Right.
it was. They didn't end up. But
you know what the really sad part is? When it happened, I was fairly excited. I was like, man, we got the first and third picks from this draft class, Andrew Luck and Trent Richardson, and man, we are going to be unstoppable. We were stoppable. Luck wasn't the problem.
No, I mean, you guys made it to the AFC Championship game. I think a year or two later after that trade, but I don't think Trent Richardson had anything to
he did not
to do with that.
He had this great ability to get the ball and then like run 2 steps into a wall and fall down. That was like his premier move. It was so frustrating, so frustrating. Yeah, and was it our offensive line? I don't know, but whatever it was, Trent Richardson not the answer for us at that time. Myles Garrett will be better for somebody. He's not the only person who might be leaving his team, though. Who else was it we heard this week?
Well, it was Cooper Kupp again on social media. His message a little bit different. He says that he has wanted and still does want to be a lifelong Los Angeles Rams, but has been told by the team that they are seeking to trade him and that he's not really a part of their future plans. So it was kind of a bittersweet post that he put out there, but he said that the Rams are working with him and his agent to try and find a suitable landing location in a trade. And if that doesn't happen, there's a good chance that he could be released. He obviously won't garner as much capital, draft capital in a trade, I think, as Myles Garrett would. And I don't know if he is going to end up getting traded or if they're just going to end up releasing him and eating whatever cap hit it is for the next year. But Cooper Kupp is still a solid receiver, not the guy he was back in 2021.
2021, he was unstoppable. Everybody knew he was getting it, and he still got it every time. And I don't know what's changed, but he hasn't had that the last couple of years.
I think he's had injuries in each of the last 3 seasons that have caused him to miss multiple games at a time. And I guess that could just be wear and tear. And they also use him in the blocking game, in the run game a lot as well. So 2021, you know who his offensive coordinator was?
Who?
Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. So, we got Jordan Addison. We got Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Cooper Kupp. He could be a good little, slot option there, and he doesn't have to do as much as he did and has a relationship with Kevin O'Connell. The Vikings have a lot of cap room. Wide receiver isn't really our biggest need, but you can never be too deep at certain positions. So there could be a chance that happens. But again, there's been no reports of anything. Just again, that speculation of the obvious connection between Kupp and O'Connell. I would like it, but I think the Vikings also have more pressing needs, like getting a guard and a center and a bunch of cornerbacks, because all three of their starting cornerbacks, none of which were elite this season, but all 3 of them are free agents this year. So we're working with a bare cupboard.
Yeah, it's hard when you see a big name out there and it would be a really good addition, but you look at your team and you're like, we need so many other things right now that I don't know.
Yeah,
but you're right. There is the relationship. If he's released, he's a free agent and he ends up not getting the same kind of price you think he might. It could always work out, like you said, as an extra, a slot receiver, something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, it would have to be. The Vikings really don't have any. They have a first round and 2 5th-round picks this year in the draft, so they don't have.
It?
Yeah, they're going to get a compensation pick, I think, from Kirk Cousins signing with the Falcons last year. So they'll get 1 like between the 3rd and 4th round pick. At least they're projected to. So we'll probably get one more there. But yeah, we traded a lot to first acquire Houston's 1st round pick last year, and then move up in Houston's 1st round pick to get Dallas Turner, who didn't have a phenomenal season. He was also, I mean, he didn't play a ton because he was behind Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard as an edge rusher, but they gave up a lot of draft capital to get him, and then also to move up one spot to get JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. So we do have, I am excited to see what JJ McCarthy does when he finally gets on the field. And I'm hoping he's your long-term answer and that he gets playing sooner rather than later. That's my hope.
Same. We have not had like a franchise quarterback that we've drafted and developed since Dante Culpepper, and then a long-term franchise quarterback since Fran Tarkenton. Like Culpepper was like he was good from 2000 to 2004. Fran Tarkenton obviously had a Hall of Fame career, but we're hoping that JJ can be the next Fran the man.
Fran the man. There you go. What other news going on? We've had something else. What was the other thing?
Yeah, so a couple more. One is that Chip Kelly is back in the NFL. He was the Ohio State offensive coordinator this past season, led them to a national championship, and he has parlayed that into a job as the offensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders under Pete Carroll. So 2 coaches that went up against each other a little bit in the 2000s, Oregon and USC in the college realm, now coaching with one another here at the NFL level. He had like early success with the Eagles before the league kind of figured him out a little bit. Like his first year, Nick Foles had one of the greatest passer rating seasons of all time. He had like 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and was
OC, right? Not head coach.
This was when he was the head coach of the Eagles in Nick Foles' first season, and then like he made him into a superstar and got him a contract, like a big contract with the Rams, and then he eventually came back to the Eagles after Chip Kelly had been long gone. But teams the second year kind of figured it out a little bit, and then he also wasn't like he once traded LaShawn McCoy, a Hall of Fame running back, for I think it was Kiko Alonso, a linebacker, like who was fine, but was not at any sort of level that LaShawn McCoy was. So it's probably
like there was something between those two that made that trade. I felt like LaShawn and Chip Kelly did not get along.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the only. I mean, it's not like the Luka Doncic trade that just happened in the NBA, but it's like. It's like you're trading. It's the same sort of like head scratching move, even at the time. That was like, why are you guys doing this? And it was because of that, and because Kiko Alonso was from Oregon and played with Chip Kelly there. And then Kelly also had 1 season as the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, hired by Trent Baalke. And then
we know all about Trent Baalke.
Not the best hirer of head coaches. But so he's been in the NFL, never as just an offensive coordinator. So maybe having a little bit more time to not be the CEO of the team making all the decisions will allow him to figure out how to not get stopped by opposing defenses.
Pete Carroll's mainly a defensive guy, right? Defensive mind.
Yeah,
he's like a quarterback guy too, I feel like.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was a defensive backs coach for like a long time in the 80s and 90s. Like he was with the Viking staff in the 1980s. But yeah, I think he does just about everything pretty well. And then he's also like a good, just like team leader. So I mean, I think it's a good move. But the Raiders need a quarterback and they need running backs. So there's not much there. At Ohio State, he had the biggest budget to work with in terms of like all the NIL deals. So he had 2 stud running backs. He had a stud quarter, like everything going his way. Much less so now. They have an offensive line and they have Brock Bowers, and that's about it.
Yeah. See how that goes for him. So Chip Kelly's back. We'll see if it's that same like super fast, get in a bunch of plays sort of offense, or if it's changed at all. I don't know what he was like in college. Was it like that? Did you watch it all?
In Oregon it was when he had like Marcus Mariota, and then with Ohio State, it didn't seem that way. It seemed like it was like a good mix, a good balance of run and pass. And like the head coach of Ohio State, Ryan Day, is also kind of an offensive guy. So they're probably like co-working together on that. But they ran like a lot of different formations at Ohio. They went anything from like the T formation with 3 backs in the backfield to like the empty pistol set or empty shotgun set. So they were running a lot of different looks at Ohio State. I don't know if they'll do that at Las Vegas, but it would be I think it would be kind of fun to see the T formation every once in a while in an NFL game with 2 fullbacks and a run and a halfback in the backfield. That could be really fun to watch.
Well, we'll see. We may see that.
It would be cool. It would be cool.
Let's hit our. We have one more big thing, and that is an added possible location for a game in the future. We don't know. Is it this year? It's 2026, right?
Yeah, in 2026, the NFL is planning to play a game in Melbourne, in Australia, and the Rams, I believe you said, were they're the designated team to play host for that game. They obviously won't know the opponent until probably April of 2026 or so. But yeah, it's just the NFL continuing to expand. We've seen it be a hit in London with a couple different stadiums. We saw in Brazil, the field wasn't like up to par at the beginning of this season.
The fans had a good time.
The fans had it. Like, it's a good fan experience all around. It's sometimes like the field quality is just different. I don't know in cricket because they're playing at a cricket field. I don't know if they use much different grass or turf as we do for our football fields, but yeah, I mean, the NFL continuing to expand the game worldwide is always a good thing.
Yeah, and that's pretty far. That'll turn your schedule on its head for that week, right? Going down under all that way. But yeah, it's always interesting to me that people in other parts of the world are so excited to go to an NFL game. You know, you have one in Germany, one in Melbourne, in England all the time, South America, Mexico, whatever. It's like, what makes them think, oh, you know what? I want to go to an NFL game, the one that's coming here in this one time, you know, and I'm going to go cheer.
I think in the States, we sometimes have that with like, there's not like a ton of soccer fans in the United States, but when the Premier League comes over to play a friendly with an MLS club, like they can still fill up like a stadium. And now that Lionel Messi is in the MLS, everywhere his club goes, they fill up a stadium. I think it's because it's kind of this one-off, or I guess in England's case, like 2-off or 3. I think if it was there consistently, it wouldn't have as much fanfare. But I think because there's enough fans of the NFL to be able to fill up a stadium once during the course of a season, or you know, again, in London's case, twice or 3 times. It's kind of a spectacle that you kind of get to see.
Yeah. And they're not doing it this year, but I hear that the 18 game season is still looking like it's on its way. And they said maybe not this year, maybe next year. That's not a headline that I see anywhere now. I've just heard those rumblings, and it's that NFL continuing to want to say, how can we get more money? How can we get more fans? How can we get more exposure? How can we get more? Roger Goodell has been really good for the NFL as far as a commissioner. Yeah, we don't all love him, but what he's done for those 32 owners, or 31, and all the people in Wisconsin, that's been big stuff.
Yeah, he's gotten it done in that respect of the job, and he's been there for a long time too, like 50, almost 20 years, I feel like. So he's making, like you said, making owners happy.
Yeah. So tonight, I think the announcement happens for all those awards that we kind of put our thoughts into like a week or 2 ago. Offensive Rookie of the Year, MVP, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, all this. And I know it's always weird for me because like the real results of those come tonight. But like you have so many new places now doing their own. Like the other day, Josh sent out this thing. It's like, it's confirmed Dan Quinn's Coach of the Year, voted by Fox. And I'm like, what? Who? Oh, Oh yeah, now Fox does theirs, and then this other place does theirs. Bleacher Report does theirs, and it's like so many different like little awards things. I almost lose track of who got the real award. So we don't know yet, but those will be dropped tonight, and I've seen lots of speculation on who's going to be in all of those, and so we threw ours in. Like I said, we'll see. Probably talk about it next week when we talk about the results of the Super Bowl. We'll also talk about the results of the awards that came in, so
including Hall of Famers. I believe there's going to be 5 that get selected to be inducted in August, and your guy Reggie Wayne could be one of them. I think. And then
say this: someone on Reddit, and people on Reddit, that's like hardcore sources. Someone on Reddit said just yesterday or the day before they saw Tony Dungy in Indianapolis, and they're like, I wonder if he's here to let Reggie know, to go up and knock on the door, or to be the one, and they were convinced. So,
or maybe
I would
both.
love it.
Isn't I mean, is Vinatieri, I think, up as well?
Vinatieri's up, and I think Vinatieri's going to get it. I just feel like Vinatieri's going to make it because so little love has been given to special teams, and he's like done so much. I feel like he's going to be in. My question is, there's Reggie Wayne and Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, kind of hanging out there. They've been in the running now for a couple of years. Dwight Freeney hasn't made the finalist, but Reggie Wayne.
Maybe it's just going to be a Colts party. That's why they brought Tony Dungy in, because he's just going to go around telling all these guys that they're into the Hall of Fame, all of his former players, and it'll just be a celebratory mood out in where they, I don't know where they do this. Do they do this at the site of the Super Bowl? I don't know, but
I don't even know. I've always watched those videos where they go knock on the door, but it's just a door. I don't know if these people are at their home and getting told this, if they're in a hotel, if they're at the site of the Super Bowl, or I don't even know.
Do you like the awards show? Like, I think it was like 10 years ago they switched it to like an awards show sort of feel, and I feel like that's been another thing that Roger Goodell has gotten like good at, because it kind of merges the award show season that we're in now. Like, it used to be just like released, like, oh, here's the votes, here's the guy that won MVP. Now it's kind of like they do for the Heisman Trophy, where it's this big award show. It's almost like the Oscars or the Grammys, and they have like performers doing stuff there. For me, I think
that's the NFL everywhere, right? So you remember back in the day when the draft was never televised? You would just there would be people picking, and maybe you would hear about it, or it was like it looked like a press conference, sort of thing. Then it turned into like a big deal, and then it turned into 2 days of a big deal. Then it turned into 3 days of a big deal. So you got round 1 on one night, rounds 2 and 3, and then 4 through 7, and same thing with the combine. Combine used to just happen, and you would kind of hear stuff and get some stats and stuff. Now it's like a multi-day like camera event, and everybody's like watching everybody and making all these. It's like everything the NFL does, they're just making it more and bigger, and except for these Pro Bowl games, which, by the way, Pro Bowl games happened. Did you watch anything there?
I did not. I heard.
I also did not. So maybe we're indicative of football people in general, because I haven't heard anybody talking about it.
I had to write for my job at iHeartRadio. I had to write a story about Byron Murphy Jr. winning the defensive MVP of the Pro Bowl games. So he had a pick 6, former, or maybe future and former Viking. He's a free agent, but the NFC won. But again, it's not like just the flag football game that they count points for. So you like have to watch all of it if you really want to see how all the points are coming in and out of. But Murphy won the defensive MVP, and that's about all I can tell you that happened from that game.
And I think the Manning brothers coached something, right? The flag football. Or is that
yeah, probably.
Right? Am I thinking
probably. I think so. Yeah, I think they did. I think they've done that for a couple years now. So I mean, we could be completely wrong, but we'll say that we're correct
as fact. This is all like basically saying we don't really keep up with the Pro Bowl games.
No.
So
no.
Yeah. I used to, when it was like a game, I would try to sometimes watch it, but it got so ridiculous that I didn't even do that. And then when it turned into the games and multi-day event, multi-stuff, like it
Yeah.
got less and less for me. So anyway, that happened. So Pro Bowl, there you go. That's your reporting on the Pro Bowl. And so yeah, we got some Hall of Fame stuff coming up, some names. We got some award stuff coming up. But today, our big thing is we're going to kind of preview and talk about the upcoming big game that happens this Sunday. That is this Sunday, right? This Sunday.
It is this
The
Sunday.
Super Bowl. By the way, we have a Super Bowl party, and one girl wrote on there that she was going to bring a Coke. And when they typed it up, they kept for like 2 or 3 times. She kept changing it, but they would type it up and it said cake. She's like, I'm not bringing a Super Bowl cake. we might have a Super Bowl cake this Sunday, but we are going to get to watch a cake of a game, right? The game I didn't want to see, that nobody wanted to see, Kansas City versus Philadelphia. And of course, the headlines all week have just been, what do the Chiefs think about people saying it's rigged? What do the commentators think about people saying it's rigged? What do the umpires think about people saying it's rigged? That's all I've heard, pretty much, more than I've heard about like the game and what it's going to be like.
And it even got to Roger Goodell during his press conference. He was asked the question, like, the reporter was sure to say, this isn't my viewpoint, but this is, somewhat public perception.
Don't find me, but I guess reporters can't be fined. But
yeah, they can be
their credentials.
Yeah, that's always a danger. But Goodell was like, it's a funny theory. It's kind of like the whole thing, like, oh, I script and write the scripts for the NFL season, but our officials, work really hard and they're doing a great job. We can always get better, yada, yada, yada. So, but he said it was like, for anyone that takes this theory seriously, he says that that's a little bit nonsensical. So that's basically all the NFL had to say about the potential of it being rigged. And, like, it's not rigged per se, but I think there are calls that favor the Kansas City Chiefs at times. I don't think there's a mandate going out from the referee union to keep the Chiefs, relevant. But I think, like, the fact that Arrowhead has always been one of the loudest stadiums, even before the Chiefs were this good. Like, it was Arrowhead, and then where the Seahawks play were kind of the big, like, really loud, rowdy places. Like, that gives you more of a home field advantage on some of the officiating calls, perhaps. But there's no, like, purposeful stuff going on. And I feel like all the big quarterbacks anyway, like Tom Brady always got the calls. Now Patrick Mahomes getting all the calls. I feel like that is just something that happens, but it's something that can be fixed if we just, have more. We have replay assist that can get within before the next play is even off. They can change the play within that 40-second span. So if you see 2 guys running into each other over Patrick Mahomes in the AFC divisional game, and they don't actually make contact with Mahomes, but they throw the flag anyway, you can have a video guy buzz down and say, hey, that's actually not a 15-yard penalty. And it will be with limited disruption, I think, of the game.
Yeah, and if somebody goes for it on 4th down, we have ways of tracking where that ball is at, and again, you can, when 2 guys are running in on opposite sides of the line, one saying they got it, one saying they didn't, you can, like, really quickly try to get in and make a determination, or even if it's not really quickly, if it's a big deal. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's like a rigged aspect as in the NFL is writing a script, but I do think there's consideration given to Patrick Mahomes as there was to Tom Brady that is not given to like every quarterback because of the fame and the success and some of that. It may not even be conscious, right? They're just trying to protect the quarterback, but they go a little overboard.
Yeah.
In doing that, and it can be fixed. That's the big thing. And I do think this offseason we're going to see probably a little more push for that than we have. I mean, it's not like we haven't tried to protect quarterbacks. It's been happening, but it's gonna get harder and harder. It's gotten harder and harder for defenses, and I think maybe they need to do something to, like, help the defense out a little bit, because right now it's hard for the defense to do anything to a running quarterback, and when a running quarterback knows that, and that's kind of the problem here, Patrick Mahomes will act like he's going to slide, then he'll run for 10 more yards, and then he'll act like he's going to fall down, and then he keeps running, and it's like, when do the defensive people get a chance to say, I'm just going to hit this guy? I'm tired of him doing this, getting all these yards.
And I think it was either against Houston or in the AFC Championship game where he took that even a step further and was running down the sideline, stepped was still in bounds, got hit, not even hard, like he was kind of just pushed lightly by the player out of bounds, and he does a massive flop. Thankfully they didn't throw the flag right there, but
everybody could see that one too. He stepped out of bounds, and then all of a sudden his shoulders go forward and his hands go up, and nobody's even touching him anymore. It's like, oh, you're a little late on that one, Patrick.
So he's trying to, he's selling it. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. And he knows that he, a lot of more often than not, is going to get the benefit of the doubt in those calls, which, are bang bang. Like I could see why the referees threw the flag with that on that slide. I could see why at first they could throw that flag, but if you have somebody quickly buzz down and say, no, there was no contact to the head, those guys ran into each other, like that fixes that aspect. But yeah.
So let me ask you this. We're previewing the Super Bowl, Philadelphia versus Kansas City. Do you think the calling will be done any differently?
I think so. I think especially because it's such a strong topic heading into this game, and perhaps because it's a neutral site and you're going to have a 50-50 split, and 50% of those fans are crazy Eagles fans that are going to, tear down the city of New Orleans if they lose on a bad call. I think there's certainly going to be a little bit more or a little bit less of what we've seen throughout the course of the playoffs. I don't know who the Super Bowl officiating crew is, but I feel like we won't see it as much because the NFL won't want to draw attention to it. Now, a couple years ago, they introduced replay assist in the Super Bowl, basically. And all of a sudden, because I remember, I think it might have been the first time the Eagles and the Chiefs played against one another, because I remember all of a sudden they're like, oh, and this wasn't a first down. This was actually 1 yard short. And I was like, did someone challenge that? And they're like, oh, and this is called replay assist, and we're using it now. So maybe they start using replay assist.
Yeah, I can see replay assist getting used more in this game because of the last 2 weeks and everything that's been said. Trying to say, hey, look, we're being fully transparent here. There's no rig. The rig is not in. So talk to me about this game. Kansas City, Philadelphia. We've seen them again. Kansas City through the first part of this year did not look exceptional. Kept winning, barely. And I think they've looked better the last few weeks. This is kind of Kansas City's way. They even if they don't look great during the year. I remember a year where Patrick Mahomes got his ankle hurt and he looked like very human, like in the regular season. But as they got the playoffs, it's like he becomes a different person and makes crazy. As much as I hate Patrick Mahomes, you have to hand it to him. He makes some crazy off balance across the field, weird throws that get exactly where they need to be. Make you hate life, but they happen. And he turns into that more in playoff time and in Super Bowl time. And then you've got Philadelphia, who they started off a little weaker with a couple of their receivers being hurt, but when those receivers came back, they started looking more dominant. Then, Jalen Hurts at the end of the year had a little bit of some injury question, and it wasn't so much him, but Saquon Barkley was like the big thing going on there. What do you think we're going to get when we come to the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah. I think from, like we've talked about, from a narrative standpoint, this is kind of the one nobody wanted to see is Eagles versus Chiefs, just because it's like the two dominant. I mean, the Lions, I guess, were maybe more dominant in the NFC, but the two dominant teams, two of the favorites, top two seeds in both of their conferences, and especially for the Chiefs, a team that has won it all. The Eagles, who don't have like the most likable fan base, and so from a narrative standpoint, I think like, it's iffy. And that's why a lot of people are questioning, oh, am I even going to watch this Super Bowl? Mm-hmm. From a standpoint of pure football, I think this game is going to be a really, really great showcase for both of these teams because they are just so even on so many positions. You could the Eagles, they say, oh, they have one of the best defensive tackles in Jalen Carter. Well, the Chiefs also have one of the best defensive tackles in Chris Jones. The Eagles have a really good offensive line. The Chiefs, on the inside at least, have a good offensive line that can double team Jalen Carter. There are some scheme differences that they use, and I think perhaps the Eagles have like the wide receiver advantage and the running back advantage, while the Chiefs have the quarterback advantage. But I think it's going to be fun to see, especially how Andy Reid matches up on some of his play calling. And I think Matt Nagy, as well as their offensive coordinator, against Vic Fangio, who was Matt Nagy's defensive coordinator with the Chicago Bears. So those guys went off against one another in practice with the Chicago. This is Chicago Bears Super Bowl, really. So I can see why Brandon, if you tell 2018 Chicago Bears fans that in a couple of years there's going to be a Super Bowl that includes Vic Fangio, a 2017 first round draft pick quarterback, and Matt Nagy, they're going to be super, super excited because they are going to think that they are in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for them, that is not the case. But the matchup between Andy Reid and Vic Fangio, I think, is going to be legendary. Vic Fangio wasn't there the last time it was Jonathan Gannon of the Cardinals, who was the defensive coordinator. So we'll see. Well, I mean, we can kind of like break down some of these matchups a little bit further, but just from a broad perspective, I think it's going to be this kind of mastermind level scheming and play calling between these two guys.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it when you kind of talked about the strengths, the strength of the receivers and the running back for Philadelphia versus the quarterback for Kansas City. That's what's going to be offensively to watch. And then it's like who defensively can match up to what they need to do. And, Travis Kelce didn't do much through the year, but we saw in the last couple games, he came back into his own a little bit, and he's such a comfortable player for Patrick Mahomes. But Patrick Mahomes has the people who can stretch the field a little bit now and make people chase them, which opens up Kelce in the middle and underneath. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who does what in this Super Bowl. Who do you think is going to come out on top?
Well, I'm leaning towards the Eagles right now. For me, it's a bit of a toss-up. I'm cheering for the Chiefs solely because, I mean, the history of a three-peat would be a little bit cool, even if it is the Chiefs. Witnessing that would be like something to say. But the Eagles, I think, just all around have a better roster. I think if the Chiefs want to move the ball, when they move the ball well, it's been with the run, setting up short passes, and then extending the field. The Chiefs this year, 50% of their pass attempts, or just under 50% of their pass attempts, were behind the line of scrimmage. And the Eagles have the best, yards per attempt defensively against those types of passes. So they can kind of sniff that out. However, the Eagles also never blitz. So I think you can neutralize Jalen Carter by double teaming him with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, who are perhaps the best guys at their position, center and guard in the NFL. You double team him, and you're not worried about a linebacker coming through the gap that creates, because Philadelphia just refuses, and Vic Fangio just refuses to blitz at a very high rate. So I think one way they can do that. So I think Mahomes is going to have some time, even with some questionable offensive tackles, with Joe Thuney moving over from guard to tackle. But at the same time, I don't know if that stuff is going to open up for him, because Vic Fangio's defense is built to put a shell on that Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown type stuff. I think if it is going to be a good game for the Chiefs offensively, it is because they are kind of like against the Bills, getting Xavier Worthy horizontal rather than vertical, because he's at Texas. He was a really good route runner, and I think the Chiefs saw that and kind of like hid that throughout most of the season. They're just like, we're going to run this guy mostly on vertical routes, but like he had a lot of good double moves when he was at Texas, and he's finally started to show that in the playoffs a little bit. If you can get him horizontal, he can get open. And the one thing about Vic Fangio's defense is that the match coverage that they play has like very specific rules for each defender, and you can exploit that a little bit if you're Andy Reid. You know that if your slot receiver goes to the right and then breaks out to the left, you might have a little bit of a leverage situation on that if they're playing the coverage that they typically do. Vic Fangio could completely go off script though, and could start sending blitzers as soon as they see that Jalen Carter is being double teamed. So that's another issue for. He hasn't ever done it, but that's certainly something that could happen. On the other side of the ball, Chris Jones can disrupt the run game, but the Chiefs actually haven't been that good against the run in the playoffs so far. They gave up 5 yards per carry against Joe Mixon, and they gave up 6 yards per carry against James Cook. So that opportunity for Saquon Barkley is going to be there. He thrives also though on missed tackles, and the Chiefs are the best tackling team in terms of like their missed tackle percentage in the NFL. So I think he's going to be limited a little bit more. I still think he's going to get bigger chunks. I don't know if he'll have that big breakout run that we've seen all season long. And then the one thing that worries me about the Eagles offense is how they respond to the Chiefs blitzing schemes. I think Mekhi Becton has had a good season against the run, but has kind of been had on a swivel when he's been a guard in pass protection. And that's kind of what the Chiefs exploited against Buffalo, was that right guard position where they would just flood and overload and make the guard have to choose. And we saw Mekhi Becton a couple times against the Rams. He kind of just didn't choose anybody and had 2 guys run past him to get Jalen Hurts sacked. And also the Chiefs have a guy that can cover AJ Brown. Like Trent McDuffie is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And he could cover. I mean, I'm not going to say like shut him down, but I will say like he can kind of like slow him down a little bit more if he shadows him. I know a lot of teams don't really shadow wide receivers anymore, but
you talk about Devontae.
Sorry,
shadow who?
So so Trent McDuffie, if he shadows AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, I guess for that matter. Yeah. But I guess if Trent McDuffie's on one of them, there's still a dangerous weapon on the other side too. Mm-hmm. I think I'm talking myself into the Chiefs winning this one, though. I don't trust their offensive line. Like the trenches battle is so even, but I think in the margins, like it's Patrick Mahomes against Jalen Hurts, and yes, the Eagles have the better wide receivers, but I think we've also been hiding something with Xavier Worthy, and he's going to have a really good game and keep this Chiefs offense moving down the field a lot, like keep those drives alive, keep the Eagles offense off the field. I don't know if the Chiefs defense will be able to stop them every time, but I feel like the blitzing scheme of Steve Spagnuolo will allow Kansas City to get enough stops that it'll put the game out of reach. So I'm going to go Kansas City 23, Philadelphia 17.
Okay. I think it's always interesting when you talk about like breaking tendencies in the very last game, right? You've been hiding something. Xavier Worthy, it's like, okay, we're just going to send him vertical, but in practice, we're always watching him do routes. And so when we get to the end, we're ready for that because we've practiced that a lot, but it's never been seen. We're breaking a tendency. Or like you said, Vic Fangio not doing blitzes, but what if he's been practicing blitzing, but like kind of keeping it where he's at. And then this last game, they're like, there's no games after this. We're throwing everything open and everything in. It's always interesting to think, is that better? Does that like throw people off, or are they not as practiced at it enough? And so it ends up, kind of falling apart. And we've seen Super Bowls where teams that looked like powerhouses during the year, they get to the Super Bowl and you have like a really low scoring game and it just doesn't look that great. Is it because they're trying new stuff? Is it because they're both just so good on defense? Who knows? But in this one, so let's go back one in Kansas City versus Buffalo, I was convinced Buffalo was like the better built team for that matchup, and that they were going to run away and make a bigger score, and it was not going to be in the hands of the refs because it would not be close. That was like my whole theory, and of course that was like wrong, right? That did not happen at all. I feel the same way about Philadelphia, Kansas City, and I know that every time I've made a prediction, it goes the wrong way, and so I am sorry, everybody. I told Brandon, he said, just say Kansas City's going to win. I can't do it. Because it hurts in my soul. And so I am going to make the prediction that I think should happen, and it's probably going to jinx everything, and Kansas City is going to get that three-peat, and I apologize to everybody in the world. But I do think Philadelphia should be able to handle what Kansas City can do. And it really is a matter of they just can't let it hang around a 4-point to 7-point game. You can't stay in that margin because Kansas City will always come back right at the end in that kind of a margin. They have to get out and they have to really do it early and keep on top of Kansas City. And there's a ton of factors. How is Jalen Hurts going to stack up against that defense that's coming at him? Will he be able to handle Spagnuolo's like blitzes? Will he be able to do it? Don't know. But they have so many options. I feel like Philadelphia is going to win this game. I'm sorry, everybody. Philadelphia is going to win this game, and I'm going to say that it will be 28. As much as I told him not to be in that 7-point range, I think it's going to be 28 to like 24, 21, 24, something like that. So let's hope. But if Kansas City wins, now here's the only beauty in a game like this is I'm only rooting against. I'm not really rooting for Philadelphia. I'm just rooting against the Chiefs. And if Chiefs win, I'll be like, well, I didn't really like either team. So
Yeah.
My son, by the way, has decided he roots for the Green Eagles. He was asking me, are the Colts in the Super Bowl? Because he's obviously such a big fan that he knew the Colts were right there on the cusp of being in the Super Bowl.
Right.
But I'm like, no, Colts are not in the Super Bowl at all. They didn't even make the playoffs. I said, but it's Kansas City versus Philadelphia Eagles. He's like, go Green Eagles, yay! So he's he's 11 and he only barely watches football with me. He has started watching a little bit now, and like I explain things, and I see that he's starting to pick up those concepts. When I was 11, I did not. My family was not a football. My family was not a sports family at all. The way my family roots for sports is this: my dad roots for whoever's the underdog. I want them to win. They're not doing very good, And my mom roots for whoever's helmet is the prettiest. Oh, I like those purple helmets. Vikings always was like a fan of hers.
All right, there we go.
not that she had she just liked whoever she liked. So that was like the whole thing. Me growing up, I didn't really get to understanding what even was happening in football until I was like leaving to go to college, or maybe in college, understanding how does everybody know to cheer or boo before the guy even says anything. Cause I didn't understand like the hand signals for offsides versus false start, but everybody else did. And I'm like, what's going on? So I'm teaching my son some of that now, and he's starting to get it. But right now he's decided if it's not the Colts playing, he's rooting for the Eagles or the Steelers. And I don't get it, but for him, I hope the Eagles win. And for me, I hope the Chiefs lose. And for all of you out there, I apologize that I've just jinxed this and they've got their three-peat. So,
well, one of us is going to be breaking our jinx tendency because I think we've both not been great at picking these playoff games so far this season. So we're going to see where the jinx really lies. I think it might be with me because my preseason predictions had Anthony Richardson winning the MVP, had the 49ers and Jets in the Super Bowl, had the Bears in the NFC Championship game. So I think I think it might not be your fault. I think it is my fault, and since I picked the Chiefs, that could mean that the Eagles will win this game. There have been teams that have broken tendency in the Super Bowl and have won, like Brian Flores did that against the Rams a couple of years ago. And then like Bill Belichick back in 1986 when he was 1990 when he was the Giants offense or defensive coordinator against the Bills. I remember watching like a feature on this, and Belichick told his defenders, we're going to switch things up. We're going to let them run for over 100 yards so that we can win this game. And they beat the Buffalo Bills 20-19 in that game because they limited so like these sort of like last minute changes. You have 2 weeks to kind of put in a new game plan if you want to. And I think if Vic Fangio not blitzes every play, but blitzes a little bit more, Zach Bond can be that guy that can make a huge difference in that aspect of the game. And then I think it's an Eagles win, because now you're going to have to choose between blocking Zach Bond or not blocking Zach Bond or blocking Jalen Carter one-on-one. Even though Trey Smith is really good, I think you'll have a hard time blocking Jalen Carter one-on-one because he might be that much better. So if I'm Vic Fangio, I'm telling him blitz like, instead of 10%, blitz like 25%. And that can kind of just change the rest of the game. And blitz early on, because then you can kind of screw up the protections of Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes also a very cerebral quarterback. He probably knows tendencies and all that. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch, but I don't think anybody is going to be happy about whatever result it is, because it means either the Philadelphia Eagles or Kansas City Chiefs have won the Super Bowl. So
my hope is, regardless of who wins, I hope that the refs do not change the outcome. Like if that happens, I hope it's like a big blowout one way or the other. So it's not like one call and everybody's complaining about that call, or two calls and that's all anybody talks about. I hope it's not that. So we will see. We will say. Now, you sounded like you were starting to talk yourself into maybe the Eagles being able to win. I don't want you to change your prediction, because if you've been like really off, I want you to stay off. So I'm just going to cement it here. Josh says Kansas City will win.
Yes. If both teams stick to their game plans that they've used through most of the season, I think the Chiefs are going to win. But I think the Eagles can have a hidden advantage if they switch a couple things up with the blitz scheme. But I'm going Kansas City. What did I say? 23-20 Kansas City Chiefs?
I think you said 23-17.
Oh, 23-17. Right, let's go overtime. Let's make that an overtime game. 23-17 overtime. Also, and it's not Patrick Mahomes that leads this game-winning drive, all right? It is Carson Wentz who gets to get back into the game. So Mahomes at some point in the fourth quarter, like he suffers in like his ankle injuries. They've been like, foreshadowing. It's like Chekhov's gun, because they've been foreshadowing this throughout the season. There's been a couple of times where he's left the game with an ankle injury, and now this time it will be a permanent ankle injury, and it will be Carson Wentz against his old team, a team that won the Super Bowl with a backup quarterback when Carson Wentz got injured. It'll be Carson Wentz now avenging that, getting some sort of poetic justice for that, and leading a touchdown drive in overtime to win the game. And the Kansas City Chiefs are back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
It's somehow you made it. I don't know if you can make it worse, because I just hate Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. But then you take and you say Carson Wentz is going to be the hero, who was a Colts quarterback for a year and did absolutely nothing right. It was just horrible all around. And him winning just makes it even worse. So let's say
they just need one. He just needs one drive, and then it'll happen for him.
Yeah. Man, while you were talking, there was something I was like, oh, I'm going to bring this up. And then I totally forgot what it was. It must have been really, really important.
That happens to me all the time. No problem.
I'm going to save it for next week, because I'm sure it'll come back to me sometime in the middle of this week. But we are coming back next week to talk the results of this Super Bowl, the results of the Pro Bowl, the results of the awards, and all that and more next time here on the Football Fandemic. Come back and join Josh and I, and we'll see how this season wraps up before we head into all the off-season craziness. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next time.